Okay, so good afternoon. It is Tuesday, September 5th. I'm sorry, it's October 15th. We haven't been live in a while, so good to be back. This week we'll do some of our endorsements, talk about some of the election and the races that are coming up. But for today, we'll go a little simpler. We'll wait a few minutes for people to log on. I'm just looking over some presidential polling now, but we'll talk about this in a little more detail as we move forward. But the goal for this week is to be live today, obviously, and then tomorrow and Thursday. Tomorrow, we'll discuss the state Senate race with Christine Cohen. We're not going to be on, it's just me talking about it. I have not had the candidates on this year. Typically, I've done that in the past, but it's just, I'm reading their websites, I'm reading their press releases, I'm seeing what they're standing for. We have records with the incumbents to look at. Especially in the state Senate race, because you have Christine Cohen versus Paul Chrissy. In the state House race, the Maura Rader one, we won't go too far into because there's an opponent filed, but there's no opponent actually running a campaign. So it's Maura Rader is going to win. In the 102nd district, which is Robin Comey versus Ray Ingraham, we'll discuss that in more detail on Thursday. That is a tough race for me to talk about. We've had some major things happen in the last few years with Robin. They're both people I know very, very well. So that's a little bit tougher for me sometimes to go over. I'll say clearly who I'm voting for, but why and what the issues are, what have you. So tomorrow we'll start with, we'll talk about for, most of the show, that Paul Chrissy, Christine Cohen race. And then Thursday we'll do the 102nd district race. But today, we'll talk a little bit about presidential politics, but some local things if you're watching from Branford, a few things to know. If you haven't been paying attention to what's happening at the community house / senior center, we had a retirement of the old director, Alex Paluzzi, his stepping in as the interim director, and all of the feedback really so far is phenomenal. Every senior I talk to is like, we're glad to see these changes. Some are just very simple changes, like staying open later, having more programming, being able to use rooms even when management's not there, like open the door to the pool room, open the door to play cards or whatever it is. And also they've increased the number of events at night. And if you've watched this podcast in the past, I am a massive supporter of creating more events at night. And part of this came from a conversation I had with the director of a funeral home who told me on a very regular basis, 1, 2, 3 people a week sometimes pass away and come in, and there's nobody there for them. There's no family, there's no friends, nobody is claiming them. And it's kind of depressing to think about, because if that's happening, what's happening in the last 4, 5, 10 years of their life with regards to a social life and knowing people? When somebody that you see on a regular basis passes away and you don't see them for a while, you start asking, where's this person? If nobody's asking that question, it's just kind of depressing. And so my push on seeing more events at the senior center, seeing more events in the evenings, not even necessarily organized events. It doesn't have to be we're sitting down at 8 o'clock and playing cards for 2 hours. It could be the TV's on. Come watch a game. Come watch college football on Saturdays, or come watch the Yankee game or the Mets game. Get people out of the house. Get people socialized. As people get older, they tend to jump in their house, close the door, and not go out again. And we want to change that. We want people out. I think it's an amazing thing our community can do to focus on. I'm happy to see the community house is focusing on that. I think it's kind of a joint effort between the first selectman's office and the community house and the senior center employees to make that happen. So what they've done is added things like last week there was trivia and sports as people watched a baseball game and Monday Night Football or Thursday Night Football. They have someone at the rec department who's doing a really good job creating those. I will say that tomorrow night is the Mets playoff game. So if you're around tomorrow around Branford, you want to stop at the community house, I want to say thank you to Michael Capone at Capone's Pizza Bar. I've asked him to donate some pizzas. He's going to donate a couple pizzas and some stuffed breads. If you're in the area, come by, watch the Mets game. I'll do my best to be there as well. Hang out. Come have a soda, slice of pizza, whatever. Let's just get more people. And if you are in a neighborhood where you have especially seniors who can't get out or haven't been getting out, or they're sitting home watching the game alone, as a community, as neighborhoods, as the town of Branford, as a shoreline, let's do things to get more of these people out of their homes, involved in the community. The end result for me is that nobody passes away alone. Right? Whether there's always somebody that is impacted by it and misses that person and shows up for whatever it is that we do. What he told me was, these people pass away and they come in and they're either cremated or what have you. And then after a few months, a church comes and collects all of these and buries them together. And that's a very nice thing for a church to do. But I'd really like to see less people that way. So we have a very diverse town. We have an aging population. And it's happening along the shoreline more and more. As seniors are not selling their homes, there's nowhere to go. You're going to see this more and more. So I'm glad that we're seeing Alex Paluzzi focus on this, Jamie Cosgrove focus on this, do more events, especially at night, get seniors out, get the community out. The last event had seniors and a father was there with his son. The young son looked about 12 years old. So let's do more of those events. So please stop by tomorrow night. It's about 8 o'clock. Stay for an inning or two. You don't have to stay the whole time. Have a slice of pizza. Hopefully we don't run out. If we do, we'll call up and order some more. But those are good events to see. And it's a good effort that we like to see from the town of Branford and focusing on more of those events. I don't know what the story is, what's going to happen with Alex is there until the end of the year. At that point, I'm sure the town will push to find a new director, but I'm kind of glad that we're not pushing to hire a new director right now. Hold off, let Alex work his magic. Let's see how it works. Kind of combining some of the overlap between those departments. It's in the same building, so there's no point in pushing quickly for a new director. Let's look at a model that may work more effectively than the models we've seen before. In the past, the senior center was okay, we close at 4 o'clock, all the seniors must leave. The second floor stayed empty unless there was a town meeting up there. And from going back to the days that we were organizing to build this building, the idea was that it was an energetic, all access. Now, COVID put a kibosh on a lot of that, but enough time has passed. Let's do things to get more seniors out, get more people out. I think the town's doing a really good job with that. So come out tomorrow night if you want to. Even if you're not a Mets fan, you're allowed in, have a slice of pizza, have some soda, and hang out for a little while. Okay, so that sets our agenda for the next couple days. Tomorrow we'll jump right into that Senate race, and we'll talk about, my thoughts on that. And clearly we're in a town and a district that is heavily Democratic. Doesn't mean a Republican can't win, but a huge advantage is going to go to the Democrat in all of these races, especially Branford, Guilford, and Madison for now. And we'll talk about that in more detail tomorrow. So let's look at the national election. Now, if you've watched this podcast, I use Real Clear Politics. The website is Real Clear Polling. I use them because I like the way they analyze the way polling is done. So there's across the country, 20 different pollsters. So NBC, ABC has them, but Morning Consult has them, Rasmussen has them, Reuters has them, and they all have different methodology when it comes to polling and putting out polling responses. So if you don't understand polling, it's not, hey, we're going to go to 600 people, ask how they're going to vote, and then say, okay, that's our result. Because that doesn't give you a representative result of what may happen on a larger scale. What we do, or what pollsters do, is they go out and they say, okay, we've asked 30 Black people and 27 white people and 18 Black, and then we say, okay, how did that group respond? Now, let's extract that by percentages and say, okay, so if we have, 30% of the Black people said this, let's expand that to what the real population, percentage of population is Black, and use that for your numbers. But every pollster does it a little differently. They weigh different groups in a different manner. Some groups are more likely to vote than others. So you may weigh seniors who are more likely to vote than the 18 to 21-year-olds who are less likely to vote in that polling. What happens in a race like this is you've had such a massive switch 2 months ago, 3 months ago or so, when Harris replaced Biden. And so the question that I have is, are they polling who will likely vote at this point, or are you just polling a level of excitement? There was such a new level of energy in the Democratic Party that I think you were measuring excitement, which overestimated the support that Harris had. So Trump was ahead of Biden significantly. And then suddenly, within 2 weeks, Harris jumps up over that. I don't think that measured actual votes. I think that was measuring excitement within the party. And so this is just my analysis of it. If we go back to the polling on election day 4 years ago, on average, we saw polling be off about 4 points. So if we had him, Biden up 10 or 11, he won by 7 or 8. You're in that ballpark. 4 years before that, had Hillary ahead significantly. Hillary won the national vote, but lost in the Electoral College. So over the last 2 election cycles, especially with Trump, we're seeing in polling Democratic support be higher than what actually happens on election day. With that in mind, we can look at a couple key numbers. I'm sorry, I'm not looking at. All right, I missed a few comments, but I'm sorry about that. I'll get back to those later. So if we look at what's happening 8 years ago on today, which is literally 3 weeks before election day, Hillary Clinton had an aggregate lead of the polls on Real Clear Politics of 6.7 points. 4 years ago, Joe Biden had a lead of 9.4 points. So this is the national vote. The Democrat is highly likely to win the national vote and can still clearly lose the election, but win the national vote. Clinton was up 6-7. She won the national vote by a smaller margin than that. Biden was up 9-4, won the national vote by a little bit smaller margin than that. Harris is up in the aggregate 1.4. So if we are looking at about being 4 points off for the Democrat 4 years ago, if we to extrapolate that to this year, we basically say if the numbers are showing, if the polling is showing Harris up 1.4, based on what happened 4 years ago, Trump very likely is up 2.5 points nationally with that 4-point swing. I would make an argument that this year may be even more in favor of the Democrats based on the news cycle and what happened with the switch at the top of the ticket, where energy was dead, and then suddenly overnight, energy skyrocketed. It doesn't mean more people are voting for Harris necessarily. It just means the energy on that side is significantly higher. So when people are asked who are you voting for, the energy you're going to get on the Democratic side is yes, 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 Harris, 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 Harris. The energy on the Republican side, Republicans tend to not want to answer these questions anyway. There's a natural distrust of government. But you're likely not going to get really great representation from Republicans. So pollsters try to adjust for that. How successful they do that are going to be different. So you have polls. Rasmussen has Trump up 2 points. CBS has Harris up 3 points. ABC has Harris up 2 points. NBC has a dead heat, 48-48. So you have this massive discrepancy, and you're seeing the margin of error be larger and larger, 4, 5, 6 points, because it's very hard to determine which groups are going to come out in force, which ones may not, which ones are going to have a high level. Are Trump voters telling the truth when they get a call from a pollster or they get a click to fill out a thing? I would argue that Harris voters that are voting Harris are saying yes immediately. You're not going to have a problem with them. They're, yes, we want Harris, we hate Trump. The Trump supporters, they have a natural distrust of these things. So if we look at the numbers, just to look at, I don't know how Harris gets that up. I think Harris needs to get that up to about 4, from 1.4 to 4. So how does she manage to do that? She's had this huge bump. She's had this push. She's had everything went in her way up into that convention. The convention was great. She went up 2.6 points overall. It just dropped back down to 1.4. And if you look at the headlines from today, there's some nervousness in the Harris camp. Now there's nervousness in every campaign the last few weeks of the campaign. So every article is going to say Trump campaign is nervous and Harris campaign is nervous. But Harris is coming out with some things that I, quite frankly, think can backfire. First, they feel like they're not getting black males. Okay, that's fine. If you're not getting the black vote or you're getting the black males, you're still getting 75% of them, but it's significantly less than the 90% that Joe Biden got. So now, how do they get back to that? How do they get black males who are not Harris supporters. What's interesting about this is the idea in the past with Hillary that women will vote for a woman wasn't true. The idea that a black person will automatically vote for a black candidate isn't true. Indians, it's simply not true. We put race and sex in everything. But overall, every time we get to an election, we find out not nearly as many women they thought were going to vote for Hillary voted for Hillary, and not nearly as many black people thought they were going to vote for a black person who vote for a black person. So Harris bought out Obama. And if you watch this podcast, you know that I am a fan of Barack Obama. I think he was done in by his idealism, which I kind of have, this kind of hope, this West Wing kind of romanticism of, yes, at the end of the day, you can have an intelligent debate and people are going to come around to the right side and you're going to get real progress done. It's naive. It's stupid. I have it and he had it. So I like Obama for that reason, for the things he tried to do. I don't think the Obamacare plan is anywhere near what it should be. I'm a massive advocate of universal health care. I think that will do wonders for economic reasons and moral reasons and ethical reasons. But beside that, but he came out and gave a speech I've never seen him give before. And it was borderline angry. It was basically berating black men. Like, how dare you not vote for Harris? And I will argue that that has already, and if it hasn't, very likely to backfire. Nobody wants to be berated. Nobody wants to be told that they're stupid for voting a certain way. You may not like Trump, but there's reasons people are voting for Trump. And even if you take away the dislike of him personally and the way he carries himself and the things he says, there are people voting for him based on policy. Like, there is foreign policy, there are tariffs involved, there is a belief on immigration, what have you. There are people voting for them of all color, of all race, of all sex, based on policy. You don't have to like him, but that's a fact. And when you come out and basically berate people for voting a certain way and that they should be blindly voting for the black candidate, it tends to have the reverse effect. The human nature is to say, who are you? I don't care if I like you or not. Even the biggest Obama supporters are going to say, I'm not for this. Now, we then follow that up with what came out today. And I understand the logic of having groups that have been disadvantaged throughout history. I understand that sometimes those groups are going to need some push further. I don't have any advantages being a white male from the family I came from or economically. Trust me, this just doesn't exist. But do I have some advantages in the job market if I was interviewing being a white male? I believe in the past, very likely, yes. I was not born into any. I was born into a religious cult, so I can't personally say yes, I benefited from that. But I'm not going to sit here and argue that a white male has not had advantages throughout history, especially American history, in getting ahead. Not going to argue that. Do I know if that's ever happened? I don't know. And me personally, like, if I've ever gotten a job over a black woman, I have no idea. I can't think of one, but I know corporate America has been that way in the past. So I'm not going to sit here and pretend there shouldn't be some steps taken to level out that playing field. And I don't want to make the argument that we're past that. There's still some level of that happening. I think to a large degree, corporate America has moved past that, but I'm not going to say it doesn't exist. And I will certainly agree that things like the crime bill, things that have put stiffer penalties on different types of cocaine that are more predominant in the black community, has destroyed families, taken fathers away from parents. Marijuana laws have taken fathers away from children, I should say. So certainly I believe there's realistic reasons to take some steps and say, let's make sure there's a level playing field. But when 3 weeks to go before the election, Harris announces, and it comes out, we're struggling getting black men. And they deliberately put out Harris. I'm going to read the headline from CNBC. Harris proposes 1 million forgivable loans to black entrepreneurs as Trump makes inroads. We talk in politics about buying votes, but that's all this is. And this reeks of desperation. It reeks of, I'm not doing well. The interviews, for a while, Harris hid from the press, didn't do anything with the press. The press started getting on her. She started showing up more, and the interviews are not that great. Trump is already a known entity. And whether people like it or not, before the election, and I posted a picture the other day, every time I see people fight, and we hate Trump, and he's awful, and he's terrible, and he's evil. Okay, fine, understood. And I have written at length on the absolute lies and slander on the immigration things that Trump is saying. Like, immigrants are not voting in any great number. They're running from federal buildings. They are not murdering people. They are not coming in raping women and children and all this other stuff. It is very much racist, the rhetoric he's throwing out there. It is false. And in my opinion, takes away from a legitimate issue he may have merits with by yelling this nonsense. That said, coming out and 3 weeks before an election and saying, okay, we're going to give 1 million people, black people, not white people, black people, not people who deserve it, not people who qualify in some way that has nothing to do with skin color. We're going to give 1 million forgivable loans under this thing called Opportunity Agenda for black men, a proposal for forgivable loans up to $20,000 to black entrepreneurs. She pledged to support federal marijuana legalization, which I have no problem with. That should have always been done. And then is pushing to support cryptocurrency. Now, for years, government was very skeptical of crypto, but now it comes out that about 20% of black men or so are in the market, so they're passing this and saying we're going to support crypto more. And it just goes to show that politicians will just say whatever it takes to win. It has nothing to do with what the best thing for the country is. It has nothing to do with policies that make sense. You have Trump yelling immigration because his base is responding to that. Most people are not impacted by immigration at all. In Connecticut, we're barely impacted at all. I get Arizona and Nevada and states, on the border saying, okay, we have to do something about this. But for the most part, we're not impacted by it. Immigrants are not murdering people. The narrative is nonsense. Should there be steps taken to prevent illegal immigration, enforce legal immigration? Of course. Everybody's been for that. Obama spoke about that in State of the Unions. Clinton spoke about that in State of the Unions. Everybody's for that. And Trump has given us this ridiculously, clearly racist narrative, clearly false narrative. At the same time, we have Harris over there saying, we're going to buy votes. We're behind. This demographic isn't coming out voting for us. And we are going to do what we can to take government money and taxpayer money and hand it to people. Now, listen, if we haven't learned this lesson in the past, when the housing market crashed, when we were allowing money to be given to people who may not deserve it and didn't show the merits of it, they never got paid back. Everything crashed. It doesn't work. Handing out free money doesn't work. And so far, Harris wants to give $25,000 towards down payment on houses. They want to give $20,000 loans, forgivable loans to specifically black men. It is just an attempt to buy votes. And there's a reason they're attempting to buy these votes. Here's the polling right now in swing states. Now, it's depressing to look at it this way, but we don't matter. Here in Connecticut, how we vote doesn't matter. I'm going to announce at 8:01 on camera that the Connecticut in its 7 electoral votes is going to Kamala Harris. We all know that. But here are the votes that matter. Pennsylvania, Trump up 0.3 points. North Carolina, Trump up 0.7 points. Georgia, Trump up 0.5 points. Arizona, Trump up 1.1 points. Wisconsin, Harris up 0.3. Michigan, Trump up 0.9. Nevada, Trump up 0.2. Those are your swing states. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. In Real Clear Politics aggregate form, in 6 of the 7, Trump is leading. If we then also analyze that these polls over the last 2 election cycles have overestimated Democratic support, these small leads may very well be significantly larger than what's showing in these numbers. That's why Harris is freaking out right now. And that's why we're coming out with these plans to basically buy votes. It's an amazing thing to see. And as we start in the next week, early voting, It'll be interesting to see, what more and more and more they try to promise to get that election. Trump is going on doing his rallies, the same immigration message he's had forever. That's not going to change. It seems to be working for him. But also a large part of Trump's support is just dislike of the Democratic Party and dislike of Harris. And the more she comes out and panders to these groups, the worse it's going to get. The more they berate people who think differently or may vote differently, then you're not the party trying to bring people together. You're thinking insulting people and berating them is somehow going to get them to say, you know what, I want to vote for you now. It's not going to happen. I have never seen Obama give a speech like that, and I was sad to see it. And this last effort by Harris, I'm sad to see. If Harris comes out and says, I'm going to push for a better national health care system, I'm going to push for national child care system, so we give everybody a reason to get back to work. There's nothing stopping you to get back to work. If we get out there and say we're going to take a better stand on making sure other countries pay for their military, better foreign policy, all of these things are policies that help create a level playing field to keep more money in the United States, that help more people work, help poor people, give them freedom locally, nationally. I'm not hearing policies from her. I'm not hearing any real policy that's going to make a difference in anything other than the standard Democratic stuff. What I'm hearing is, here's $25,000 more to buy a house. Here's more money to start a business. But when government hands out money, it jacks up inflation. It makes things more expensive. That will backfire. I'm a Harris voter based on foreign policy. I go back to the Washington, why the president was established. His job was foreign policy. I feel better with Harris than Trump because Trump is such a wild card. But at this point, I'm holding my nose to vote Harris. This is not an eager vote. And more Democrats I talk to are sharing the same thing. They don't like her. They're going to vote for her because they don't like Trump. They don't like her. And that doesn't bode well based on the numbers we're seeing so far, the polling we're seeing so far, and what's going to happen on election night. So, well, that's it. Enough for that. It's 4:30. We'll let that one go. Tomorrow we'll talk about the state Senate race locally. We'll talk about the presidential races, but remember, our state senator and our state legislative representatives probably have a greater impact on our day-to-day life than the president does. On money coming in, on playgrounds being done, on schools being built, on constituent issues that have to be handled. That's what's handled from right now. It's Christine Cohen, Robin Comey. There's other people going for those races. That's their job, is to handle getting money back to Branford, getting Branford residents a voice when they need help with a regulatory body, with healthcare, with social services, with childcare, protective services, whatever it is. That's the person they're supposed to call. So your day-to-day life is more impacted by the races we're going to discuss tomorrow and on Thursday than the presidential race. So remember that if you're voting early, if you're going to the ballot box, filling out an absentee, what happens below you, no matter who you vote for president, Trump or Harris, who you vote down, vote, don't just pick party line. Look at those races. Ask yourself who's most qualified to run those races and to represent you, who's going to most likely respond to you and help you when you need it. That's the person you should be voting for. And we'll talk more about that over the next 2 days. Until then, guys, have a great night. If I miss you tomorrow on the podcast, feel free to come by the Branford Community House around 7:30, 8 o'clock. Again, have a slice of pizza, watch the Mets game, hang out for a while. Don't have to stay for the whole game, but we want to get as many people out as we can. Heck, bring food if you want. That's fine too, if you're a good chef. On that note, have